Legends, welcome back to Before the Birds. It is 4:54 a.m. here in Newcastle. The roosters are still asleep. A copy is strong, and we're going live from KubeNest today. So from episodes 1 to 4, we cleaned up your sustainability data, found out what your single source of truth was. We mapped out the data universe, and then we locked in some naming conventions at scale with the two-mast system for location and topics and units. We're building on that foundation by answering one question. How do I organize all my metrics so that I don't break the moment I add more sites, years, or topics? If you've ever stared at a spreadsheet thinking this works now, but if it will break if we grow, then this episode is for you. Okay, what is a data model? Let's just strip back the jargon and I'll explain exactly what it means. So a data model is literally the blueprint for how your sustainability data is organized, linked, and used. So without a simple data model, data stays siloed in different areas. So emissions will be here, waste will be there, and WHS will be somewhere else. Scaling hurt. So every new site metric means rewriting formulas, and reporting became the copy and paste nightmare. But with a simple data model, your naming conventions from episode 4 actually get used. Your single source of truth from episode 2 work across all topics. And you're ready for hierarchies and governance, which will be explained in later episodes. So you don't need a data architect. You just need one pattern: the masters, the registers, and the calculations. Let's go and have a look what I mean. So when you're thinking about building your data model, you want to break it out into 3 sections. So how I've got it here is the masters table. So this is all your answers. Keep it simple like that. The registers table, this is where all your raw governed inputs live. And then your calculation tables, which is where you do all your maths and all your roll-ups. Okay, so just 3 sections there. Go to the next slide. Right, inside the masters table, so this is where all the naming convention codes, all your information kind of lives. That can't change. You need to use this all the way through your other tables. So at a minimum, as we spoke about in episode 4, you want the location master, which has your identifier, name, and description in it. And then your second mask 2 underneath that is your material topics, subcategories, metrics, units, etc. I won't have to go through them again. Now, you don't need this, but it is useful as well, is to have a emission factors section sitting in here as well. So then they're not changing for each financial year. Okay, so in big blue writing down the bottom here, most people should only read these. 1 or 2 data admins are allowed to change them. Very, very important. You don't want anyone messing with this data. You need to be able to govern it with policies and lock the spreadsheet out with passwords and whatnot. All right, moving in. Now we've got the registers table. So this is your single source of truth for inputs for any given material topic. So columns I would suggest is your identifier, material topic, your quantity, unit, start, end dates, and evidence. So this is where your data is going to get audited by auditors. So you need to make it very, very clear what it is that your data entry from your bill is reading. And this is where they'll read that. Chip for these registers could be a couple of people or a couple of sections in the business. So finance might own, your scope 2 register. Projects might own, majority of your scope 1 registers. But in all, I would say the sustainability manager will be locking all of these down and sending the finance or project teams these data spreadsheets to fill out. So it could have different ownerships, but whatever you mapped out earlier in your sustainability universe, that's how you would give ownership out. All right, in big blue writing down the bottom. So use Excel data validation. So location master and topic unit master can only be chosen from the master tables. So these 2 here, you cannot free type in. Okay, they have to be able to be brought straight over into the registers table. Another very important point. Finally, we have the calculations table. So it's going to do the same thing as the registers table, where it grabs the first 2, identifier and topic, grab the period, that data line, that single data line, the quantity, apply the emission factor to it, and then give you tons of CO2 equivalent. That is what the calculation table will do. Okay, and in this calculations table is where you'll use your VLOOKUP, XLOOKUP, pivot tables, and send your reports from here. So this is kind of you're playing around and sending your last output register. All right, so the principle of these data models is the inputs live in registers, The logic lives in calculations, and the definitions live in the masters. Okay, they're the three separate registers we have. Okay, so once you've built out this data model for, let's just use electricity or scope 2, you need to build it out for one thing. How do I scale this now across all the other material topics? So you literally just repeat the same pattern. It's the master, then it goes into the register, and then it goes into the calculations. You just repeat the same process. So your data model is no longer one big spreadsheet, but look at it as smaller subsets or buckets of data that are sitting within the organization. Okay, so I've got here now some common pitfalls to avoid. So don't try and do everything at once. Just start with scope 2 with 2 locations and do it from the master to the register through to the calculation, and just do that once. Letting anyone invent new codes in the registers, force them back to the master spreadsheet. Mixing the definitions, inputs, and calculations into one sheet. Separate them out as we had 3 buckets. And no versioning. So name the files very, very clearly so people know when they're looking at the name for the file, it's very clear what it is. Okay, and I'll just come back on this point from the start. Most people should only read these. 1 or 2 data admins are allowed to change them. So you talk to the whole organization to come up with the master file, but only a couple of people are allowed to change them. All right, now to do your homework for the week. Between now and next Monday, pick one metric from your universe map. So I think we're going with scope 2 electricity. Make sure that your location master and your topic master from episode 4 exist. So you've got this existed, line 2, they've already been done in previous episodes. Build it into a single register that's streamed from 5 to 10 rows. So we need to have a little bit of data in there to see it work. And then build out your simple calculation sheet that pulls the quantity from the register, looks up the factor, and gives you the emission. Okay, that's as simple as we want to keep it. Okay, now add 1 new row to the register and check. Do the calculations update without touching the formulas. So you've got your data model all set up and you've added another row into your raw data, and did everything still flow into the calculations properly? Okay, and could you add another site or location without changing the structure? If you can do all that, then well done. You built your first data model for sustainability data anyway. Excellent. Well, that's it for this week's episode 5, building your data model on Before the Birds. We will be doing episode 6 next Monday morning. So until then, peace out. I'll see you next week. Bye.